Let's talk about what I read in June. The answer is not a lot. Am I in a reading slump? Or am I just spending too much playing choices and trying to finish the royal romance? It's hard to say. So the first book I'm going to talk about is the one I forgot to talk about in May, and that is I Hunt Killers by Lyga. This very much has a premise that I enjoy. Teen detective is just, it's kind of my genre. Now this one has a bit of a different spin on it because it is about a kid who is the son of a famous serial killer. He spent years watching all of his dad's tips and tricks, being around for his kills, so he knows a lot about the inner workings of a serial killer's mind. And so he wants to help the detectives try to catch what he believes is a serial killer in their hometown at this moment. Now this plays out kind of like you expect it would. The police start off not really believing him, not really wanting his help, then they start to think maybe he's involved, and eventually, you know, they get their man. It's a bit of a predictable premise, but I enjoyed the character's voice in this, and so I definitely think that helped a lot. I do think this has kind of a noir style similar to Veronica Mars that really worked in its favor. The character definitely has like their witty comebacks and all that, their one-liners, and I'm a sucker for that. What can I say? I'm easy to please. I listened to this in audiobook and it was very easy to listen to. I thought the narrator did a really good job at capturing his voice, and I'm definitely gonna listen to the rest of the series. I thought that there were enough kind of loose ends and enough intriguing premises going into the next books that it definitely made me want to continue going. I believe I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. First thing I read this month was Dead Mountain by Donnie Eichar. This was a nonfiction book about the, I'm not going to be able to say this, Dyatlov Pass incident. I heard the name of this 1,800 times and I cannot tell you how to pronounce it, so I apologize for that. I tried to look it up, couldn't find it, and gave up. So let's just ignore my Russian pronunciation. This was about a group of students who went on this hiking expedition together in these mountains and ended up dying in mysterious circumstances. Now this writer who went into writing this book, he just found himself very engrossed in this mystery and decided that he wanted to know more, so he actually traveled to Russia and decided to take that same journey, take that same hiking trail mission. My brain is broken tonight. He decided to go on that same track and try to see what happened. I thought this was a very intriguing, engrossing story. I enjoy true crime of any nature, and while this one isn't necessarily true crime, I still feel like it kind of fits in that genre, especially because there are just so many conspiracy theories as to what could have happened. You know, you had everything from like just regular natural occurrences to Russian gangsters or what's the Russian, KGB, to KGB operatives, to aliens. Like, you had all sorts of theories, and I did watch the video that Caitlin Doughty put out where they said that this has pretty much been solved and it actually looks like it was an earthquake. That made a lot of sense to me. I enjoyed the audiobook listening experience. I thought that the author did a good job at making the story personable. You know, I think that was the one benefit to deciding to take this journey for himself, and including all these personal tidbits, is I always think a book is going to be more interesting when you get that personal aspect. So I definitely enjoyed it more because of that. I will say, like, for some reason the second half of the book was losing me. I think it's because I'd been listening to it kind of non-stop while working on a project. So I don't know, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't necessarily like my perfect book, but it wasn't the book's fault. It just like wasn't my personal area of interest. The second book I finished was Wundersmith by Jessica Townsend. This is the sequel to Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow. I'll be talking about Nevermore in an upcoming vlog I'm doing. Lord only knows when that video will come out. I am so slow at reading books for reading vlogs. I'm terrible about it. There's just something about the idea that I either have to put on makeup every day in order to film these reading vlogs, or I have to be okay with filming without my makeup on. And my mental health is not going to let me do either one of those things. So it's slow going. I can't say a ton about this book because obviously it's a sequel, and I also haven't talked about the first book yet since I haven't put out that reading vlog. So I'm just going to say that I really enjoyed it. It got darker than I was expecting, but I would recommend it tremendously, and I can't wait to read the third book. The next book I read was Soulprint by Miranda. I think I was closing my Audible account and I had some credits left that I wanted to trade in for audiobooks. I got rid of a ton of books in an unhaul recently, and I said that some of those books I was going to try and listen to an audiobook. So I picked up a couple of Miranda ones that weren't available at my library, and this was the first one I picked up, which is scary because it was horrible. I did not enjoy this whatsoever. I'm not sure how to explain to you what this is about. This is sort of a YA sci-fi dystopian type book. Essentially, what I believe happened in this book is, in this book, your soul lives on in someone else when you die. And somebody has created this technology to kind of keep track of where these souls go and who they pass on to. And so, because of that, any crimes your past self has committed, you kind of owe because you are that past self. Essentially, you're connected to all your past selves and you have to pay the crimes, but you also get like the advantages of your past selves as well. So like if they had a ton of money left over, you get that money. If they committed crimes, you're fucked. It focused on a girl who is in jail and has been in jail for her entire life because she was actually the person who came up with this technology that can trace your past selves. Well, her past self came up with that technology. She didn't. She's like 17. Anyway, so she's been in captivity for her entire life. It's not technically jail. It says that it's for like her benefit, but essentially she's in jail. And anyway, she decides that she wants to escape. She hooks up with like some kids who help her escape, and they go on the run. I will say that this took some turns that I wasn't expecting. I definitely thought there was going to be a love triangle situation, and the way I was expecting that love triangle to go is definitely not where it went. It actually went the complete opposite way, and I enjoyed that. But everything else I hated. Like, this was just not an enjoyable experience for me. I just thought the whole thing was annoying. I thought every character was kind of irritating. I did not care about anyone. The premise just felt kind of dumb. Any like twist or reveal just didn't matter to me either. I didn't like any of it. I gave it 2 stars. It just wasn't an enjoyable experience. I would definitely recommend skipping this one. I've heard great things about Miranda. I'm just thinking maybe YA isn't her best work. At least not this one. The next thing I listened to was The Case of the Missing Marquess. I don't know how to say that word. By Nancy Springer. Essentially, this is Enola Holmes #1. She is Sherlock's little sister. There was recently a Netflix movie adaptation of this series, or at least of this character. I have no idea if the movie is actually connected to this book in any way, other than it's about Enola Holmes. So this follows around Enola Holmes, whose mother has gone missing. Her brothers come and want to take her away to this boarding school, and she doesn't want to go, so she runs away and tries to figure out what happened to her mother. Along the way, she actually stumbles on another missing person case and decides that she wants to solve that one as well. I listened to this on audiobook because it was free from Audible, and it was just a quick, easy listen. Like, I don't really have anything groundbreaking to say about it. I enjoyed her character. I enjoyed the story surrounding it. It was very quick. I'm assuming this is a middle grade book, and so I think I listened to it in like an hour because I was listening to it sped up on 3 times speed or something, but still, it was just, I feel like if you had all enjoyed Sherlock, you would probably enjoy this. It is definitely like a younger version of that, but I still enjoyed it. I enjoy plucky teenage detectives. I don't know what to tell you. The next thing I listened to was The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearse, and boy do I have a lot to say about this one. This is a, one setting murder mystery. The setting is a sanatorium turned hotel that the main character's brother is getting married in. So the main character and her boyfriend show up there for this wedding, and it turns out that there are some people missing. They find some bodies, and the search gets underway because eventually they get snowed in, and people are getting picked off one by one. This book frustrated the living fuck out of me. I love the idea, I love any situation like this, any sort of locked room mystery where you have to figure out who's dying and why, and I love when it's only from one person's point of view, because I think if you put in too many POVs, it just it gets muddled and you don't have enough time to flesh out characters. this was pretty much entirely from this one woman's point of view. There was like a little couple of other things mixed in, but for the most part it's from this one main character's point of view. So I enjoyed that. There were some kind of horror chapters almost mixed in of this one girl who gets kidnapped and kind of what she's going through as she's been kidnapped by this murderer, and I enjoyed those a lot. Unfortunately, those chapters didn't last very long, and I feel like my enjoyment went away with it, because then I was left with the main character, who was the dumbest woman alive. Truly just give this woman a trophy for being the worst cop in the history of the world. The problems with this book are so obvious to me, and okay. As you can see, the book is called The Sanatorium. It is well known to anyone coming into this hotel that this is a sanatorium that was turned into a hotel. You know that by the fact that there are medical apparatuses all over the fucking hotel, because the person who built the hotel decided that like he wanted them everywhere in these glass in case they wanted to like celebrate its history or whatever fucking. So this is not hidden in any way. Despite that, the main woman, who is a detective, couldn't figure out that these murders might have something to do with the fact that it was a sanitarium until 70% of the way through the book. Did I mention that all the corpses have medical bracelets? The killer chopped off some of the characters' fingers, left them in glass boxes with medical bracelets around the fingers, and the detective couldn't figure out that it might have something to do with the sanitarium. How? I was just so angry. Oh, also there was medical masks that they used to like cure TB or something also on the dead bodies. Like, I don't know what the killer had to do to make it more obvious that it had something to do with the sanitarium aspect, other than just like spell it out in blood for the detective. So following around this detective was frustrating, to say the least, but it was also frustrating as someone reading the book, because I want to be surprised, I want there to be a twist, and having the twist be that this has something to do with the sanitarium is ridiculous. It's in the title. Like, that was the least surprising thing you possibly could have done. To make this book better, all they had to do was name the book anything else. Just seriously, name it whatever the fuck you want, just nothing to do with the sanitarium, and take away the aspects of it being a sanitarium. You know, hide that. Keep it as the reveal. Slowly make it so that the characters find out that this used to be a sanitarium. I don't understand. I feel like this book would have been so much more effective if you had slowly learnt the dark history of this hotel. But instead, they put it in the title, and so nothing was surprising. I will say that the reasoning behind why the murderers were having I really, really liked, and that's what made me even more frustrated, was the idea that this could have been a good book and there was just obvious missteps that made it so horrible. I also realized at the end of the book that this is part of a series, and I was like, why would I ever want to follow this woman again? She's clearly the worst cop to ever exist. Like, why would I want to follow her on her career? She also, of course, had a sad backstory, and everything involving that was the most predictable thing you can imagine. It went exactly how I thought it would go from the very, very beginning. So yeah, I really didn't enjoy this one. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. I mean, this is definitely probably going to be on my worst books of the year list because it was just so frustrating. On a happier note, the last book I'm going to talk about is This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. This is a non-fiction book written by a man who used to be a doctor in the UK. This is essentially his diary entries from being a doctor. They're literally just quick little snippets from kind of the days where he was working, where he talks about his cases or talks about different missteps he had, and it was just really funny. He's actually a TV writer now, so he very clearly knows how to write, and he has a really good sense of humor. But there's also like some really grounded, upsetting, like heartbreaking moments in this as well. I just think he did a good job of balancing all of that. I gave this 4 to 5 stars. I just really enjoyed it. I listened to it as an audiobook and it definitely worked. I believe he's the one who narrates it, but I could be totally wrong about that. I think this would be the perfect like coffee table book, or if you've ever read, what is that book? It's like black and it's called The Big Book of Awesome or something like that. And kind of the way they have their entries is like you could literally read one a day if you wanted to, like right before bed. That's kind of the way this is like every entry is very, very short. And so you can read it just like in tiny little snippets as like a little pick-me-up during your day. He was a doctor for I believe about 10 years. So, I mean, he definitely has like a ton of different cases to talk about. You know, he has things that are funny and lighthearted to things that are outrageous and like crazy medical cases to, you know, things that are just like really, really upsetting. He talks a lot about suicide awareness and like mental health awareness. He also talks about all the downsides of the UK's medical industry. I'm Canadian, so I obviously don't know a ton about the medical industry in the UK, but it does sound like it's kind of a mix between Canada and the US. Like they have public healthcare as well as private healthcare. He worked in NHS and he talks a lot about like how flawed the system is, and he talks about how the system creates worse doctors because they have to work like 100+ hours a week, and so of course they're tired as fuck, and you know, their mental health is horrible, and so they're missing things that they shouldn't be missing, and it costs people their lives. He talks at the end about politics and just how certain politicians have kind of shifted people's view of doctors in the UK and how it's really done a disservice to their industry by taking away funds, and just how already they were strapped and the situation's just gotten worse. I will say you're either gonna love his sense of humor or you're gonna absolutely hate him. I happen to really enjoy him. He definitely has some like dad jokes and stuff that are kind of corny, but I really enjoyed it overall. He's not always politically correct. He definitely said some things about different religions that kind of like get in the way of his medical practices, and I am shocked that he didn't cut them out of the book, but overall I really, really enjoyed this book. I would totally recommend it. I gave it 4 to 5 stars. It was a really good listen. So I happened to finish 2 more books in June, so I thought I would kind of add these in to my wrap-up this month. When I filmed the first part of the wrap-up, it was only like June 24th or something. I didn't realize how many days there were left in the month. So yeah, I finished 2 other audiobooks and I figured I'd just add them here. The first one is What Made Maddy Run by Kate Fagan. This is a non-fiction audiobook about this student athlete named Maddy who committed suicide when she was at Penn State, I believe. The author is kind of chronicling what led up to her suicide, kind of talking about the pressure there are on students nowadays as well as on athletes in particular, talking about the depression that Maddy was going through before this happened, and just kind of expanding on all of the events leading up to her death. If you experience depression at all, you were probably going to find this pretty triggering. Personally, I definitely did. You can't hear someone else's experience with depression without kind of thinking about and ruminating on your own, and just like, it definitely makes you think about like your own worst moments or moments where you've come close to similar fate. So I think it's definitely hard, and you should probably listen to it in shorter bursts, which is what I tried to do at times. I think this would be a great book for anyone maybe who has a loved one who is experiencing depression but doesn't quite understand it themselves. I've never been an athlete, so I definitely don't understand the pressures of that in particular, but I believe the author does a really good job of talking about that. She talks to many different people in Maddy's life. She talks to different people who've experienced that same sort of pressure in college. She also focuses a lot on technology and how it kind of separates us from people, because while you are talking to people so much more often because you can text them and it's so easy, you're not really talking about things that are important. You say, hey, what's up? And you don't really talk about anything that's truly bothering you, especially because you don't have that face-to-face connection. I don't know if I necessarily particularly agree with what the author was talking about. I actually believe, at least for myself in my own personal experience, I find it actually easier to talk about deeper issues on text than I ever would in person. But I understand what she's saying in the sense that you can feel so alone because you don't have that personal connection. I did find it very frustrating to listen to because it does feel like there are moments where Maddy was trying to reach out and nobody was listening because they didn't understand just how serious she was. People were noticing her behaviors and noticing how down she seemed and how much she needed to change, but no one seemed to understand just how dire the situation was. Once again, I think this is a great novel for people who don't quite understand depression, because maybe they could see the warning signs through this novel. Overall, I did enjoy this book, and I think it could be an important resource for people, so I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. The other novel I finished this month was Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. I already knew what the big reveal or what the big twist was in this book, unfortunately. I had it spoiled by watching a review in a video like 2 years ago. Like, whenever this book first came out, someone had mentioned in a video something, and I was like, oh shit. So like, I knew what was going to happen. I waited 2 years hoping that I would forget. Didn't happen. I decided to listen to it on the audiobook, and it was an interesting experience because I love the twist. I feel like it's not something I see a lot, and I just like adore it. I actually wish I had seen it in something previous to this because I think it's a really cool twist. I think that it's very dark, and I enjoy kind of like what the reveal has to say. The commentary, I guess, on society. But the thing about knowing the twist is I had a very different experience reading the book. And mostly I feel like not thinking about the twist really allowed me to focus more on other things in the story, like for instance the characters, and I definitely found it lacking. I feel like so many writers have tried to kind of copy Gillian Flynn's style of writing because obviously Gone Girl was such a massive hit, but I feel like what people don't seem to understand about Gone Girl is the main character in that novel is incredibly interesting. She's so dynamic as a character, regardless of what's happening around her. I feel like so many writers, Riley Sager included, try to like copy this formula that Gillian Flynn has perfected, and they just like, they can't do it because she's just an impeccable writer. She really excels at writing characters. I feel like all thriller writers just throw a main character with a dark, traumatic background, and then they're like, boom, personality. And like, no, that doesn't make a personality. I really didn't like this main character. I didn't think that there was anything really that interesting about her. Yes, she was intrepid in her investigating, but that was it. Like, that was her entire personality. There was nothing else there. She made a ton of really dumb decisions in the second half of the book that made absolutely no sense. I feel like the atmosphere was there. The audiobook was fantastic. There were definitely some really creepy elements because of the atmosphere and such, and because of the performance. I just feel like Riley Sager needs to focus more on making his characters memorable and making his characters more dynamic and well fleshed out, because this could have been a 5 out of 5 like amazing book, and because the character work wasn't there, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. By the way, this is not a new setup or anything. I'm just reorganizing my bookshelf. Now let's send it back in time for the outro. I hope you liked today's video, and I hope you'll come back in soon. Bye.